Let's talk about the mix that I've used for a long time for venues that if I was going on, Gloucester Canal, Aire and Calder, the Division 1 National, when there was an odd Bream to be caught, an odd Skimmer to be caught, you know, getting that mix right, get it in your head that you're confident. You know, I spoke to Jake when I've been going to the Gloucester Canal, and this is the mix he used, and he put me on it, and to be fair, it's seen me really well, and it's seen, you know, the Gloucester Canal years ago, you would never think about putting any fish meal ground bait in at all. Now, it's the first on the bank. I know so many people that use the 2 ground baits that I'm going to use, not just for the Gloucester Canal, but when they're going on natural venues, even a bit of river fishing for bream and skimmers. It has to be, you know, the iconic F1. Now, this is the F1 Dark, so I'm talking about, you know, cagey fish. You know, the Aire and Calder Canal this year for bream, they will be really cagey. Lots of people fishing for the fish that are in there. So using a dark ground bait, in my mind, makes absolute sense. It's clear, you know, the fish are off the bottom. They're not that bothered a lot of the time, and getting your ground bait right is absolutely essential. It's been about, it's mega, it smells absolutely divine, to be honest. But another ground bait that Sonubaits produced a good while ago now is Sweet Skimmer. Again, beautiful caramel sort of smell. This is the dark version, so this is the latest version that we brought out. Obviously, we've got the natural one, if you like the natural. But for me, when I'm not catching massive weights of skimmers in bream, I want to catch an odd crafty one. I think toning everything down makes perfect sense, and it gives you the confidence, really. Again, really simple to mix up. This is like what I call my favourite natural feeder mix. Again, 2 tubs. Now, it's entirely up to you. You could put, because basically Sweet Skimmer is sort of a crumb biscuit made ground bait. There's no fish meal in there, so it's a natural ground bait, which on natural venues, I think it's nice to have both, because they see a bit of bread in the winter, you know, there's probably a bit of bread going there all year round, and having it mixed in with the fish meal, to me, makes absolute sense. Now, I'm only going to put a pint of this in because, and you can vary that. If you, say for instance, you drew a good area, and this is probably why I mix my ground bait up on the morning, because you can make your mind up. If you draw a good bream and skimmer area and think, right, I've got to go for it today, I'm going to be catching some big fish, I might use 2 pints of F1 to 1 pint Sweet Skimmer. If you go to a tough area where you might have to catch some other fish in between, like a few roach and stuff like that, you could put 2 pints of Sweet Skimmer to 1 pint F1. But I'm going to do what I would normally do, because I do draw quite well. So I'm going to do 1 pint of Sweet Skimmer. Again, beautiful smell, really, really. It's got a few little flecky bits of colour in that. I don't know if you can probably tell that from the camera. Beautiful smell, honestly. So stick that in, and then I've got a 2 pint container, which I'm going to put my dark F1 in. It can be green F1 if you want, it's entirely up to you, but this is what I would use, you know, springtime, when the water can go really clear on some of the Gloucester Canal. On some of it is absolutely tap water nowadays, and that, beautiful. Them 2 ground baits together are absolutely stunning. Mix them around dry, and guess what? If you put 1 pint of water with that, so 3 pints of ground bait in total, to 1 pint of water, you're literally bang on. So just under 1 pint, like that, because that's a 1.3. Smack it in, don't mess about. They can tell straight away, because of that Sweet Skimmer is more of a biscuity, crummy mix. It takes the water on really quick. Obviously, you can vary that if you want a really dry ground bait, because you're catching fish on the drop. Just cut the water down a little bit. But if you work on 3 pints, 3 pints is basically a kilo of ground bait, 3 pints of dry ground bait. And I think for a session, for most of us, that's absolutely fine. Now again, don't mess around with it too much. As long as all the dry ground bait's got water in it, You can see that's a lovely dark colour. Very similar texture to the first mix I'd done, which was my silverfish sort of winter mix. But when it's finished, it will be different. So again, leave that for 20 minutes. This is how easy it is. This is why I can't understand why people mess about their ground bait on the bank so much. Even if you're drilling it, you might not have to put it for a riddle if you drill it. But sling it to one side, have a clear up, get on with some kit. I'll come back to that in 15, 20 minutes, push it through a riddle. One of the best skimmer mixes on a natural venue I've ever used. I've left that now for 20 minutes. Obviously, you can leave it as long as you want, as long as I would say a minimum of 15 minutes. Now, straight away, because it's this F1 and sweet skimmer mix, it's more crumbly. You can tell straight away. So it's dried out quite a bit. And that's what you want for feeder fishing. You don't want, I don't think, unless you're fishing in really, really deep water and you want it to sort of stick to the feeder, get down to the bottom, you need that sort of mix. Now, let me just go out the shot a minute. I'm going to push this through the riddle. And I'm going to show you, instead of making an absolute mess on the table. Again, you can push it through this fine riddle. Quite easy to push through a riddle as well, because it's sort of got that sweet skimmer in there, which is more of a crummy, biscuity ground bait. But again, simple mixing. 3 pints of ground bait to just under a pint of water. And do you know what's so amazing? That I've actually messed this up on the bank over the years. And it's such a nice mix. You can actually just add some F1 dark to it to dry it out a bit if you do make a mistake. If I've been in a bit of a rush or I can't be bothered to get my containers out of the bag, which I know we've all done. And you can see, because I'm fishing using a real fine riddle, you could use the next size riddle up, especially when you start getting into springtime, you know. But I do like this riddle. I think it just creates, you know, you've done all that thinking about your ground bait and the actual crucial part of it, putting it through a riddle. And it takes you a couple of minutes. Let me put that to one side. No, that is lovely. Sort of what I would call a medium heavy ground bait. Look at that. You can just imagine that putting through a cage feeder. You can do what you want with that. You can put it in soft. The nice thing about that mix is, if you cast in a decent distance and you still want it to go in the feeder, you can put it in, but you don't have to squash it really hard, which is a lot of feeder fishing is like that nowadays. You want to chuck your feeder out, goes in, and then comes out really quickly. And that's what that mix gives you. If you have it too sort of like claggy, that's fine if the venue, sometimes at Tamar, for example, I might have a real stodgy mix going. But I would say for your normal Gloucester Canal, loads of venues, that is absolutely bang on. So give it a go. F1 Sweet Skimmer has to be, for me, the best all-round natural ground bait, especially when you're fishing for skimmers and bream.